The intervention started at exactly 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, which seemed unnecessarily dramatic even for my parents. They'd summoned me to their Beacon Hill townhouse, the one with the marble entrance and the doorman who still called me Miss Alexandra, despite knowing me since I was 6. "Sit down, Alexandra," Dad commanded, gesturing to the chair across from his massive desk. The same desk where he'd lectured me about disappointing the family when I chose social work over law school. Where he'd threatened to cut me off when I dated someone he deemed beneath us. Where he'd told me I was wasting my potential on bleeding heart nonsense. Mom stood by the window, arms crossed, her designer suit perfectly pressed. She'd always been Dad's enforcer, the one who delivered the cruelest observations with a smile that never reached her eyes. "We've been patient with you," Dad began. "More patient than you deserve. But your grandfather's death changes everything." I felt my chest tighten. Grandfather Thomas had died 3 weeks ago. The funeral had been a circus of distant relatives pretending to grieve while calculating their inheritance prospects. I'd barely had time to process losing the only family member who'd ever actually seen me. "We know you expect to inherit something," Mom said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "You were always his favorite after all. Following him around, listening to his stories about building the business from nothing. He saw something in you that we clearly missed," Dad added. "But Thomas was old. Sentimental. He made certain provisions that need to be corrected." My heart rate stayed steady. I'd learned years ago not to react visibly to their provocations. "The family trust is substantial," Dad continued. $47 million to be precise. Thomas managed it personally for decades. Now that responsibility falls to your mother and me. "As it should," Mom interjected. "We understand how to handle money. How to maintain the family's position and legacy." Dad leaned forward. "You, on the other hand, make $38,000 a year working with homeless veterans. You drive a 10-year-old Honda. You live in a 1-bedroom apartment in Somerville that your grandfather insisted on paying for." "That ends now," Mom said flatly. "The apartment subsidy is cancelled. You'll need to find something within your actual budget." "We're not being cruel," Dad insisted, though his smile suggested otherwise. "We're being realistic. You're 31 years old, Alexandra. It's time you learned to support yourself without family money propping you up." I took a slow breath. Okay. Mom's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose. "That's all you have to say? What would you like me to say?" "Some acknowledgement of how generous we've been would be appropriate," Dad said. "We've supported your questionable career choices for 9 years. Allowed you to waste your education on social work when you could have joined the family firm. Never once insisted you contribute to the family's social obligations or business interests. Your grandfather enabled your delusions," Mom added. "Made you think it was acceptable to throw away your advantages on people who won't appreciate it. People who can't help themselves anyway." The contempt in her voice when she talked about veterans, men and women who'd served their country and come home broken, made my jaw clench. But I kept my expression neutral. "The trust will now be used appropriately," Dad announced. "Supporting causes that enhance the family reputation. Funding ventures that generate returns. Not whatever charity nonsense Thomas was indulging. You'll receive nothing from the estate," Mom said. "Thomas left you some sentimental items. His books, that ridiculous vintage watch collection. But the actual wealth stays where it belongs. With family members who understand its value." My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. "We're also discontinuing the health insurance subsidy," Dad continued. "And the emergency credit card. Effective immediately. You wanted to live like a common person, Alexandra. Now you can experience what that actually means." "Is there anything else?" I asked quietly. "Yes," Mom said. "We're having a family gathering next weekend. The Winthrops, the Cabots, the Lodges, all the families that matter. You're not invited. We can't have you embarrassing us with your poverty complex and those dreadful stories about your work. You'll never see a penny of the family money," Dad threatened, standing up. "And if you try to contest anything, if you cause any trouble, we'll make sure everyone in Boston society knows exactly what kind of person you are. A disappointment. A drain on the family. Someone who chose failure over success. Learn your place," Mom added, her voice ice cold. "This is how things will be from now on. Accept it gracefully and we might throw you some consulting work occasionally. Make a scene and you'll be completely cut off from everything. My phone buzzed again. Then immediately again. Someone needs you? Dad mocked. One of your homeless friends? Tell them you can't afford to help them anymore. You can barely help yourself. I stood slowly, pulling out my phone. 3 missed calls from Robert Chin, the family's estate attorney. The same Robert Chin who'd worked with grandfather Thomas for 30 years. Who'd sat with me monthly for the past 5 years, teaching me everything grandfather wanted me to know. I should take this, I said calmly. We're not finished, Mom snapped. Actually, I think we are. I answered the call. Robert, hi. Is everything all right? Alexandra, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but we have a situation. Your parents have submitted requests to withdraw $600,000 from the family trust. $300 for a summer house in Martha's Vineyard, $200 for renovations on the Beacon Hill property, and $100 for what's listed as business development opportunities. I glanced at my parents, who were watching me with irritation. That seems excessive for 1 month, I said. Dad's face reddened. Excuse me? How dare you discuss our finances with? Their monthly distribution is $200,000, I continued, talking over him. This request is triple that amount. Yes, Robert confirmed. Which is why I need your approval. As trust manager, all withdrawals over the standard distribution require your signature. Mom's expression shifted from anger to confusion. What is he talking about? I held up one finger, still focused on the call. What's their current yearly total, Robert? $2.4 million so far this year. They're on track to exceed the $3 million annual limit by July if this pattern continues. The trust documents Thomas established are clear about sustainability, correct? Very clear. The corpus must remain intact. Distributions cannot exceed annual investment returns. Your parents' current spending rate would deplete the principal in 18 years. Dad snatched from my phone. I stepped back smoothly. Robert, can you come to the Beacon Hill address? I think we need to have a clarification meeting. I can be there in 20 minutes. Perfect. See you soon. I ended the call. The silence in the study was absolute. What? Dad said slowly. Was that about? That was about the trust. The one you just told me you control. Mom's voice was sharp. We do control it. Thomas left it to us. Actually, he didn't. He left me as trustee 5 years ago. You've been receiving distributions that I approve. Distributions that Thomas and I carefully calculated to balance your lifestyle with long-term sustainability. Dad's laugh was forced. That's absurd. You're 31 years old. You have no financial experience. No business background. I have 5 years of experience managing a $47 million trust under grandfather's direct mentorship. Every investment decision. Every distribution policy. Every sustainability calculation. He taught me everything. You're lying, Mom said flatly. Thomas would never put a social worker in charge of the family fortune. He put a trained trust manager in charge. The social work was always secondary. It's what I did with my time while I learned from grandfather. While you both assumed I was wasting my life, I was in his office every Tuesday and Thursday evening learning portfolio management, estate planning, tax optimization, and fiduciary responsibility. Dad's hands were shaking slightly. If this is true, and I don't believe it is, then you've been deceiving us for 5 years. No. I've been doing my job. Grandfather didn't want the family to know until after his death. He said it would influence how you treated me, and he wanted me to develop the skills without that pressure. This is insane, Mom said. Robert Chin would never allow this. Robert helped design the succession plan. He's been copied on every monthly report I've sent you for 5 years. The ones you never read because you assumed they were just administrative updates. The doorbell rang. Mom and Dad exchanged glances. That would be Robert, I said. Shall I get it, or would you like to? Dad's face had gone from red to pale. Alexandra, if you're lying about this. I'm not. But you're welcome to ask him yourself. I walked to the door, my heart pounding but my steps steady. Robert stood in the hallway, briefcase in hand, his expression professionally neutral but his eyes kind. Hello, Alexandra. Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore. He nodded to my parents who'd followed me out of the study. Robert, Dad said urgently. Tell me this is a joke. Tell me Alexandra hasn't been managing the family trust. I'm afraid I can't tell you that, Richard. Because it wouldn't be true. Mom actually swayed. This can't be happening. Perhaps we should sit down, Robert suggested gently. This is clearly a surprise to you both, though I'm not sure why. The monthly reports have been quite detailed. We returned to the study. Robert opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. Thomas Whitmore executed a new trust declaration 5 years ago. He appointed Alexandra as trustee, with full discretionary authority over all distributions and investments. I witnessed the document, as did Judge Matthews and Thomas's accountant. Why? Dad demanded. Why would he do this? Because he watched you both spend recklessly for decades, I said quietly. Because he saw how you treated money as an endless resource rather than something to be stewarded. Because he knew that without oversight, you'd burn through the principal in 15 years and leave nothing for future generations. That's not fair, Mom protested. We've built businesses, maintained properties. With trust fund distributions, Robert interrupted gently. Mrs. Whitmore, your boutique consulting firm has operated at a loss for 6 years. It's only sustained by monthly trust distributions of $40,000. Mr. Whitmore, your venture capital fund has a negative return rate. You've lost money on 14 of your last 16 investments. Dad's face was crimson now. How dare you? I'm stating facts that are documented in the trust reports. Facts that Alexandra has been carefully tracking and managing. Without her oversight, you would have made several catastrophic investment decisions that would have cost the trust millions. What decisions? Mom asked weakly. I pulled out my phone, opening the Notes app where I'd been tracking everything for 5 years. 2 years ago, you wanted to invest $3 million in a tech startup run by your college roommate's son. I researched the company. They had no viable product, no path to profitability, and a CEO with 2 previous bankruptcies. I denied the distribution. The company folded 6 months later. That was just bad luck, Dad muttered. Last year, you wanted to buy a commercial property in Cambridge for $4.2 million. I had it independently assessed. The building had structural problems that would cost $2 million to repair, and the rental income wouldn't cover the maintenance costs. I denied that request too. The building sold for $2.8 million 3 months later after the foundation issues were discovered. Robert nodded. Alexandra has saved the trust an estimated $12 to $15 million in bad investments over the past 5 years. She's also grown the portfolio by 32% through careful, conservative investment strategies. The trust was worth $36 million when I took over, I said. It's now worth $47 million. Grandfather's goal was sustainable growth that would support the family for generations, not just maximize your current lifestyle. Mom sank into a chair. You've been controlling our money this whole time. I've been managing the trust according to grandfather's wishes and fiduciary best practices. Your standard distribution is $200,000 per month. That's $2.4 million per year. The trust generates approximately $3.5 million in annual returns. The difference is reinvested to protect against inflation and market volatility. We need more than that, Dad said desperately. The Beacon Hill property needs updates. The Martha's Vineyard house is an investment. The Beacon Hill property was renovated 18 months ago for $300,000. The Martha's Vineyard house is a luxury purchase, not an investment. And your business development opportunities, I looked at Robert. Country club membership upgrades and a boat, Robert confirmed. Hardly business critical. You're punishing us, Mom said. This is revenge for how we treated you. No. This is me doing the job grandfather trained me to do. If I wanted revenge, I would have mentioned that your current spending rate is unsustainable. That at your current pace, you'll exceed the annual distribution limit by August. What happens if we exceed it? Dad asked. The trust documents are clear. Distributions are reduced the following year to compensate. Spend $600,000 over the limit this year, and your monthly distributions drop to $150,000 next year. The color drained from both their faces. We can't survive on $150,000 a month, Mom whispered. Then you need to adjust your spending. That's what you told me 2 hours ago, remember? When you lectured me about living within my means. Robert cleared his throat. There's something else you should know. Alexandra has been more than fair with you. Thomas's trust documents gave her the option to reduce your distributions to $100,000 per month as a baseline. She could have enforced that from the beginning. Instead, she's maintained the higher distribution rate and only stepped in to prevent catastrophically bad financial decisions. Why? Dad asked, looking at me with something between confusion and fear. Because you're my parents. Because despite everything, grandfather loved you and wanted you to be comfortable. Because I'm not interested in punishing people. I'm interested in protecting the family's long-term security. But you let us believe we controlled everything, Mom said. You never asked. You never read the monthly reports. You never questioned where the money came from or who approved it. You just assumed. And you treated me like a failure because I didn't broadcast my success. Robert pulled out more documents. There's also the matter of the apartment in Somerville. The one you're kicking me out of? Asked my parents. The trust doesn't own that apartment, Robert said. Alexandra bought it with her own money 4 years ago. The payments that appeared to come from the trust were actually from a separate inheritance Thomas left her when her grandmother died. $1.2 million that she invested wisely and used to purchase property. Dad's mouth opened and closed. But we thought. You thought I was living off family charity. I was living off my own investments while managing yours. The health insurance? Mom asked weakly. Also mine. I get excellent benefits through my employer. The policy you thought you were paying for? That was my own coverage that I never canceled when grandfather set up the trust arrangement. I kept the administrative emails going to you because it was easier than explaining the truth. And the emergency credit card? Dad asked. There never was one. That was something grandfather told you about to make you feel like you were supporting me. The one time you tried to cancel it, when I dated Marcus, there was nothing to cancel. Grandfather just told you it was handled. Robert checked his watch. I have another meeting, but Alexandra, we should schedule time to review the new distribution requests. Denied, I said firmly. All of them. Mom, Dad, your monthly distribution remains at $200,000. If you need more than that, you'll need to submit detailed proposals with clear justification. Just like any other trust beneficiary would. Beneficiary. Mom repeated. We're just beneficiaries? You've always been beneficiaries. You just didn't realize someone else was managing the fund. Someone who actually studied portfolio theory and fiduciary responsibility. Someone who spent 5 years learning from one of the best financial minds in Boston. Robert stood collecting his documents. Richard, Catherine, I'd be happy to schedule a meeting to review the trust structure in detail. But I want to be clear. Thomas's wishes were explicit. The documentation is ironclad, and Alexandra has performed exceptionally in her role. There are no grounds for legal challenge. After Robert left, the three of us sat in silence. Dad stared at his desk. Mom looked out the window. I remained calm, waiting. You could have told us, Dad finally said. Would you have listened? Would you have treated me any differently? Or would you have fought it, challenged it, made everything more difficult? We had a right to know. The trust documents didn't require me to tell you. Grandfather felt, and I agreed, that it was better for me to learn the role without the family dynamics interfering. Mom turned from the window. What do you want, Alexandra? An apology? Acknowledgement? I don't want anything. I'm going to continue doing my job. Managing the trust responsibly. Ensuring the family has financial security for generations. That's what grandfather asked me to do. While we what? Beg you for money. Dad's voice was bitter. While you live comfortably on a generous allowance and make better financial decisions. $200,000 per month is more than 99% of Americans make in a year. If that's not enough, the problem isn't the trust. It's your expectations. You sound just like him, Mom said quietly. Thomas. That same self-righteous tone. He wasn't self-righteous. He was practical. He built something substantial and wanted to protect it. He saw what happened to the Cabot fortune, depleted in 2 generations through careless spending. The Richardson estate split apart by family infighting. He didn't want that for us. So he put a social worker in charge, Dad said. He put someone he trusted in charge. Someone who cared more about the family's long-term security than short-term luxury. Someone who couldn't be manipulated or bullied into bad decisions. I stood up, gathering my coat. I need to get back to work. We have 3 veterans moving into new housing today, and I promised I'd be there to help. That's it. Mom asked. You drop this bomb and just leave? What else is there to say? The trust structure isn't changing. Your distributions aren't changing unless your spending forces them to. My role isn't changing. The only thing that's different is now you know the truth. And next weekend? Dad asked. The family gathering? I wasn't invited, remember? You made it clear I'm an embarrassment. Alexandra, Mom started. It's fine. I have plans anyway. We're doing a fundraiser for the Veterans Center. Real work with real impact. Not just standing around talking about wealth while contributing nothing of value. I walked to the door, then turned back. For what it's worth, Grandfather loved you both. Every decision he made was because he wanted to protect you from yourselves. He wanted me to ensure you'd always be taken care of, even if you made bad choices. That's what I've been doing for 5 years. That's what I'll keep doing. Out of duty? Dad asked. Out of love. Despite everything, you're still my parents. I just wish you'd seen me as your daughter instead of a disappointment. I left them sitting in the study, surrounded by the luxury the trust fund provided, finally understanding who'd been making it all possible. My phone rang as I drove back to Somerville. My coworker Marcus. Hey, how'd it go with your parents? About as expected. They didn't take it well. Are you okay? Yeah. Actually, I feel relieved. 5 years of pretending to be something I'm not. 5 years of letting them believe I was failing. It's exhausting. You're the most successful person I know, Alex. You manage a $47 million trust, run a successful nonprofit on the side, and still show up to help veterans every single day. Your parents are idiots if they can't see that. I smiled. Thanks, Marcus. Drinks after the housing setup? You sound like you need them. Definitely. I pulled into the Veterans Center parking lot, where 3 families were waiting to get keys to their new apartments. Apartments I'd helped fund through a grant from the foundation I'd quietly established with my own money. The one my parents didn't know about. The one that had placed 47 homeless veterans in permanent housing over the past 3 years. My phone buzzed with text. First from Mom. We need to talk about this properly. Then Dad. This isn't over, Alexandra. And finally, surprisingly, from Robert. Your grandfather would be incredibly proud. You handled that with remarkable grace. I responded only to Robert. Thank you. He taught me well. The veterans were waiting. Real people with real needs who didn't care about trust funds or family drama. Who just needed someone to see them as human beings worthy of dignity and support. Miss Alexandra. Called out Tommy, a Marine veteran I'd been working with for 6 months. We got the keys. All 3 families move in today. I smiled, pocketing my phone. That's wonderful, Tommy. Let's go see your new place. As I helped them move boxes and set up furniture, I thought about Grandfather Thomas. About the hundreds of hours we'd spent in his office, him teaching me not just about money management but about responsibility, dignity, and the weight of stewardship. Money is just a tool, Alexandra, he told me. The question is what you build with it. Your parents build monuments to themselves. I want you to build something that lasts. Something that helps people. That's the real legacy. I tried to do both. Protect the family fortune while using my own resources to make a difference. It had meant living smaller, dressing simply, driving an old car, and letting my parents believe I was struggling. But it had been worth it. My phone buzzed again. This time a group text to the entire family from my uncle Christopher. Just heard the news. This is unacceptable. Family meeting this weekend. Alexandra needs to be held accountable. I stared at the message, then at Tommy helping his kids pick out which bedroom they wanted. At Maria, a Navy veteran, crying happy tears as she turned on the water in her new bathroom. At James, an Army veteran standing in his kitchen for the first time in 3 years. Let them have their meeting. Let them plot and scheme and rage about how a 31-year-old social worker dared to control their access to money. I had more important things to do. I had a trust to manage responsibly. Veterans to house. A legacy to honor. And 5 years of experience proving I was exactly the person Grandfather Thomas believed I could be. My parents had said I'd never see a penny of the family money. They were right. I'd never been interested in seeing it. I'd been too busy managing all $47 million of it. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one with the most power. Sometimes the family disappointment is the only one actually succeeding. And sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply doing your job with integrity while everyone else falls apart around you. I helped Tommy hang curtains in his daughter's room, my phone buzzing with increasingly frantic family messages that I'd read later. Or maybe not at all. Because tonight, 3 families who'd served their country would sleep in safe homes. And that mattered more than anything my parents could threaten or promise. Grandfather Thomas had taught me that. And everything else I needed to know.